A boundary is a semi-permeable barrier that
Warum
lets
bist du auf dem
good in,
Main?
but blocks the bad from coming in.
There's
Ich
tons of
bin
things
das
that
mein
you
niedrigster
are
Account.
doing right now that make me feel very bad that I'm not setting a boundary about.
That's just because you're bad at setting boundaries.
Ey, du meckerst bei
But
egal
also-
welchem
or
Account
maybe
ich
it's
logge,
because,
leckerst du rum.
because
Das kotzt
Das
mich
ist nicht
an,
dein
Mann.
niedrigster Account, das ist dein höchster Account von der MMR her.
Nein.
Du hast vielleicht 15 Games.
Ja, mein letztes Game war Average Platin oder so.
Oder?
Warum?
Ist wirklich nicht sonderlich hoch. Ja, 4 bis Platin.
Immer raus. Bis dann.
Tschö.
User disconnected from your channel.
and have more tolerance for your the parts of you that will make me feel bad than you expect.
But understand your perspective on relationships. It's wholly and unquestionably transactional, or like to what degree?
Okay, I
I'm
should
sure
have
you don't.
never, ever uttered this fucking word because people take this and they mean the worst possible things with it. Okay?
I am
When
being
I- when
actually
I-
very
when I
charitable,
say-
but I want to ask.
Sure. When I say things are transactional, I include a lot of things in that transaction. Part of that transaction is a person like making you feel a certain way. When people hear me say transactional, they think like your wife has to give you a certain number of blowjobs or gifts or cook enough breakfast for you. But when I think of transactional, what I think of is that like if I have a private call with a friend, like part of the transaction of us communicating with each other is that they enjoy my company. I would hope they do, and I enjoy their company. Like we're transacting. In some ways, I'm providing some positive utility to their life. They're providing some positive utility to my life. Now, these are calculations that can run in medium and longer terms. It doesn't mean, so some people might naively say, oh, well, if you think it's transactional, then as soon as somebody's mean to you, you'll cut them off. Well, that's not true. There are plenty of people you can have a bad experience with that overall provide you a lot of like good. This could be wives, it could be children, it could be husbands, it could be friends. Like, you know, it's not always 100% good, but over like periods of time, you do these calculations. And if they do turn bad, that's generally when we say like, this is a negative relationship, you should try to escape it, right?
Right. In like relation and talk, we would call that like there's always going to be a natural level of like tit for tat or like.
Yeah, and I understand the verbiage you're using, but I would be very careful in saying it for the same reason therapists would say you should be careful, is because when you get into keeping track of a tit for tat system, things can get very toxic very quick. But on the flip side of that, you should be running, and I would absolutely say this, you should have some mental gauge of a tit for tat, because it is possible that you can become so selfish in a relationship you're losing track of things. So for instance, I'm not thinking of every single time Melina like cooks me breakfast or cleans the house or does something, but if she's doing a lot of things and I'm not doing anything, whether we think tit for tat is toxic or not, at some point resentment is going to build in the difference between our contribution to chores in the relationship, right?
Right. And like I think one piece that's also in that you're kind of talking about is like over time, like the level of like exchange is different, right? Like when you've just met somebody, there's a little bit of like give and take of like obviously if you're with them, some of the give might just be it's nice, it's fun, right? But as your relationship deepens, there's going to be a little bit more that's expected for being given, but also you're also expected to give more, and then the trade-off isn't going to be just like, oh well, you're not giving to me anymore for like 2 weeks, so fuck you. Like that's obviously not what it would be. Because if you've had 2 years, like people go through stuff, right? You've like built up that like oof,
One partner might be going
social
through
currency,
school,
essentially.
one partner
Yeah.
might get depression, one partner might have a phase. Yeah, there are things that can happen, of
Exactly.
course.
But if this it maintains over time for like 7 years, where like there isn't a lot of give and take, people don't broadly enjoy being around each other. They're not really like loving on one another too much.
Yeah.
Reality is like that relationship is inevitably doomed to fail.
I would say, but so this is where I would push back on. I know you're here. I'm not trying to talk about you when you're not here, but this is why I would push back on views like Max's, because I would say views like this are how people wind up in toxic relationships for long periods of time.
I would agree.
Is that they think that like, yeah, like, fuck, I made a commitment, I can never get out of this, I gotta do this. Like, well, no, hold on. Like, there are points in your life where you can step back and evaluate. Do I feel like this is something that isn't benefiting me in the long run? And I feel like people are even scared of using that type of language because they feel selfish, but you should be selfish. It's your life, it's your relationships, it's ultimately your happiness. Unless you've made a commitment otherwise that you feel like you're committed to. So like either having a child, or say you get married to somebody and they have like a degenerative disease and you feel a commitment there, right? At those levels, I can understand you might feel like you have a compulsion to follow some level of commitment. But if you're in a relationship that's just making you like sad and miserable all the time, I don't think you should feel a compulsion to stay there. I would argue that that's unhealthy. Yeah.
Right. These are like the non-negotiables. Like this is what I would communicate to people. It's like you have to figure out what your non-negotiables are, and if they appear in your relationship, you have to address them as well.
So ich muss kurz aufs Klo, eine Sekunde.
They get to choose if that works for them, right? But you have to have non-negotiables because like things can't just work forever and just like grin and bear, resent each other, and like hate each other.
Well, they can, but those relationships suck. And then when somebody dies, they're like, fuck me, I'm 65. Or those are the people who are like, and everybody's, I've done this, where people stay in a bad relationship for way too long. And then by the end of it, they're like, fuck, like I'm 34 now. I should have dumped this guy when I was like 26. Like, why did I waste 10 years here? Like this happens to people, right? Yeah. And it's, but, okay. Hi, Maxwell.
Okay.
Your name is actually Max, isn't it? It's not Maxwell, right? I feel like Max is a weird name, but okay. Or
Just 3 letters
Maxim.
on your whole birth certificate? Wow. Concise.
Yeah, very concise. Yeah, I asked you about transactionality in our like second or third conversation. I pointed out that I get money every time I talk to you, and you said you don't think about it. You said you never think about that, and to that meant
sure. Okay, wait. So sometimes we speak. So let me elucidate. Let me expand on that. Right. When I say I don't think about that, I don't mean that I'm so naive and stupid that it doesn't even cross my mind. When I say I don't think about it, what I mean is that like this isn't a thought that would influence an action I have.
I know.
That's what I mean. Okay, cool. Just making sure we know that, right? Because I don't want you to. Like,
Yeah, I know that you're
really
aware of it. But
yeah,
you're
of
saying
course,
you don't
obviously.
think about it. But what that meant to me is that you were always thinking about it.
Well, I mean, yeah, I'm always thinking about a lot of things, right?
But this is one of them, and this adds to my view of you as seeing relationships as transactional.
Okay.
And
and
now you're saying I'm mentally. You're implying I'm like mentally ill or unhinged if I love someone despite them making me feel mostly bad feelings. But I think that you have like a immature.
We both
view
disagree
of
with each other's approach
relationships.
to relationships. That's fine. I'm okay with that. I think yours is bad. You probably think mine is bad. but-
I think yours is worse.
Yeah, of course you do. Which I would expect, because why would you think mine is better but still have yours and defend yours? So my question would be though, and this is where I ask for, I don't know if it's a respect of my character or just like like your assessment of my character. Like there are a lot of things that I keep in mind for our conversations. Do you think I would talk to you if I thought that your primary goal for talking to me was just to make money off of me? Like how much would that influence my actions in associating with you?
I mean, that was my primary goal the first time we talked. Obviously, any small, tiny creator who's like, "Can I talk to you on your huge platform?" Their primary goal is profession. I'm
Sure, but do you think that I think that if I did think that your only reason for talking to me now was to just like enrich yourself off of me, do you think that I would continue to engage with you in the way that I do?
You talk to some people who I think their only goal is to enrich themselves, and you still talk to them. So I don't know, but I probably not me. No, I think if I were doing that, probably not.
Okay. Yeah. So then, who cares? Or why let the subtext, right? Like imagine in your world, or fuck, I already know what you're gonna say. You're gonna say, "Oh, well, I would think of this." In your world, every single pretty girl would always think that every guy she was talking to never wanted to be friends with her ever. They all just wanted to fuck her, and so she could never even truly have a friendship with a guy because she'd be worried every single guy only wants that.
Shave your head.
Listen, have you seen Sigourney Weaver?
I
Aliens. Alien 3. Have you seen
I've seen Alien 3.
the one girl in V for Vendetta? What was her name?
Natalie Portman.
Nicole or Natalie
Hello?
Portman? Yeah.
Hello?
I've seen it all. I've thought about licking those scalps. I guess.
I don't mind you having those thoughts. I think it's good to have them. I think if you don't, you become naive, and then you blind yourself to ways you could potentially get super fucked over. Just don't let I would say don't let those thoughts like dominate and take over, or otherwise ruin. Because now I would argue that in a weird way, you're kind of being the guarded one by having that thought in your head. It might be the case. So here are some facts that I'll say. Anytime you message me, and this has been the case, I will always talk to you. You are erudite. I think you're both interesting people. Anything you message me. I think in my head, right? I think in my head, I think that you probably would talk to me more, but you're worried about how it would come off, or you would pursue a conversation more. But when I say things like, oh, okay, well, anything else? In your mind, you're thinking like, fuck, he wants me to leave. So I think that you've actually been guarded in a way that has precluded future conversations where I would have gladly had the conversations, but you're so worried about coming off a certain way, you're thinking about certain things that it's prohibiting you from engaging.
It's not just about coming off a certain way; it's about actually hurting you.
Sure, but I'm telling you that I don't think that would happen. But if somebody came to you, if a third party came to you and they were like, this girl says that she doesn't mind if I do a certain thing, but I'm so worried that if I do a certain thing, it's like it's gonna come off a certain way, and like I'm not even talking to her now. Like, what would you tell that person? That they're being guarded, or, well, that's an okay thought to have?
I think it just depends on how she said it. I mean, like, again, you saw me with Shaylin in the doll conversation. She said yes, but I didn't believe her. And so you're saying yes.
Johannes?
I feel like this is part of my inner
Das ist so ein
conflict.
Knopf, ne? Der leuchtet blau.
I feel like if I reach out to you,
Ja.
it
Ich hab
seems
doch
like
schon gestartet.
I think you feel a little put upon.
Ja, ich abgelehnt oder hast du abgelehnt
I
oder?
really feel that way. You really
Ich
think
hätte gesagt, ich muss kurz aufs
I
Klo.
really think that you feel a bit put
Ich hab dich
upon.
abgeholt.
when
Und danach habe ich
anybody
gedacht, ich habe
messages
gestartet.
you about anything for any reason. Yes. People ask me to ask you for favors all the time. They're like, see if Destiny will connect you with blah blah blah.
Yep.
Or
Because
or
you know
ask
what?
him-
Because you're right. You're not autistic. You are correct. That is a true read. There are sometimes like, I don't know if I want to take this person, blah, 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 blah. But like for me, and this is where I like my mental models of other people is so important for me, is I try to judge them by actions. Like I might think you believe a certain thing, but like what do you actually do? That's how I update my priors, right? In terms of how I feel about a person.
Isn't
And
part
when
of
you when you reached out to me, every single time, I think I've been ultra receptive. And I think it might actually be the case at this point that I think I might have reached out to you more for conversations than you've reached out to me. I think we might actually be at that point because there have been at least 2 or 3 videos we've done where like, you want to come on and chat about this? So you have a mental idea of how I feel about you approaching me. If you look at my actions in reality, they're totally congruent.
But I
Unless
mean,
you want to
I
feel like
also
some
think
mind
we should
trick and
give
stuff where
you-
you're like, yeah, go
I
ahead.
should give you a little credit here, where it might also be by being thoughtful.
Well, hold on. I would say that, though. You're speaking for me. I don't know if you actually believe that. I don't know if you think you have done that, because I think you're still worried about it. I do think you do. That's why if you message me with a conversation, I would always tell you, yeah, whatever the fuck random shit you message me with. Okay, yeah, let's hop on and chat or whatever. Or we can chat offline. I do believe that. Now, you just stated that, which is really interesting, because it feels like you were trying to give me a logical answer to why a thing might be the way that it is, but it doesn't feel like, now I'm making a mind read here, so you can tell me if I'm totally off, but it doesn't feel like you actually believe that. It doesn't feel like you think, like if you, in your deepest feelings, do you feel like, have I earned the right to like message this guy whenever I want and he like always just talks to me and it's chill? I don't feel like you feel that way.
I
Could
think
be
I
wrong.
don't think I've earned a right to message you whenever I want. I think I've earned a sense from you that I am being thoughtful when I message you. I think that by being thoughtful when I message you, if you get a message from me, you assume that it's probably for a good reason, and that.
Yeah, but that sounds even more guarded. Now it sounds like you're using like that hyper, or what I've said, you're using like this hyper transactional lens of like, I can only message him when I feel like I'm going to provide like an interesting enough conversation for it to be worthwhile. Doesn't that seem a little guarded, or does it feel a little guarded?
Yeah, it might be. I experience it as being, especially now that it's happening to me. I have people being like, you know, oh, you should talk to this person, and then I'll look at that, and I'm like, oh, this person's just your friend. I'm like, I can't trust anything anybody says to me anymore. I have no idea who is my friend or who is using me or blah blah. It's
Nee,
weird.
nicht gegen
You never
Lux,
know
bitte.
why anybody's trying to talk to you.
Bitte.
And you're,
Nee.
you know, 50 times bigger, so, or more,
No.
100 times, 1,000 times. So, yeah, and then that combined with my sense that you have this like heartbreakingly pessimistic
Meint einer wieder
transactional view of
Wetterprofi.
relationships, yeah, it does make me want to be careful, and yeah, part of that is selfish, I guess, and is me being guarded, because I can't stand the idea of I don't like making you feel violated, which I feel like you feel whenever anybody says they want something from you, and then also used or professionally.
Sure.
taken
So
advantage of.
everything you're saying is true and valid, not in just the sense that like, oh, your feelings are valid, but in the like, I think your
Hey.
rationale is pretty sound.
It's
I'm not
bad.
even gonna fight you on any of it, but like to back up for a little bit and having like kind of a meta conversation. So the initial reason why I think you and most people, almost all people, don't like it when people are guarded is because there might be fruitful interactions that you could have, but a person's like own barriers are preventing it from happening. And you see where I'm going, right? Now I'm going to say I think it's interesting because it feels like, remember I said this idea that I feel like you project onto other people sometimes? I feel like what you just laid out is a really good justification for why you're guarded around me. Because there are other conversations that it feels like we could have either pursued further or had, but we hadn't because you're really worried about the way that I view the world and how it'll come out.
Yeah.
And now so it feels like the guarded thing is there on your end, and that was maybe a little bit projected onto me is kind of what it feels like. But I could be
Yeah,
wrong.
or I'm right, but we're both right, and it's just like a mess. But
Sure.
or
But
it's
my-
just it's
or my
complicated,
form
not
of-
a mess,
my
but just
form of-
complicated.
Sure, but I will say, not to be too argumentative, but like your form of being correct is that I'm either engaging in a ton of self-deception and I'm always guarded about being guarded. But I feel like for your level of being guarded, I feel like we've had a good conversation. We've logically laid out the points to where you feel guarded.
Wait, is his
Like-
internet?
Your internet's
You're frozen.
popping up.
Oh, there we go.
You're back.
Wait,
Kind
am
of.
I okay? Yeah, okay. I feel like all of the arguments that I've laid out from start to finish are like pretty reasonable, that like you feel a certain way because of things that I've said, things that you've said, and then ways that
Venture off the beaten path.
Können Wälder.
Das ist richtig, ja. Korrekt.
Welcome to Summoner's Rift. Seconds until minions spawn.
Oh Gott, war top.
Wait until my seeds take root.
Mhm.
Was ist das für Musik?
Oh, ist die Worlds-Musik, wenn du die Musik nicht gemutet hast, Schiller.
The forest holds many surprises.
Hört aber auf,
Bleibt die?
wenn die Minions spawnen, glaube ich.
So much more to see. Such a busy
Okay, aus dem Schlechtesten das Beste gemacht, eigentlich. Aber jetzt haben sie vor uns 2 Red. Nein, nee, noch nicht.
Nee. Oh, ich muss alles.
Ignite.
Nein, ich cancel. Ranger Ignite.
Ach, das ist die eine doch Smartcast, Mann.
Take careful steps.
Ich da den einen Autotech mir raus.
Things aren't always what they seem.
Ja.
Gerade richtig bad, der Gank. Das ist dumm. Keine Ahnung. Verliert dafür so viel, wenn das nicht klappt, Mann. Ja.
Wo ist das Rauschen? Alter, hörst du es auf, Philipp?
Nö, nicht so. Ist weg gewesen kurz?
Nee.
War gemutet oder so, das bin ich nicht, glaube ich. Aber dann muss irgendwas mit deinem PC sein.
Ja, ich hab ihn erwischt.
Macht nix, die steht in 1000 Minions.
Angler.
Scheinbar.
Slowed. Ich hab jetzt. Ist vorbei.
Hm.
Jetzt ist weg.
Push das glaube nicht. Ich habe als erstes geflasht, oder?
Weiß nicht, ich hab 90.
Ich habe 60.
Abgerissen, ne?
Müssen alle meine Minions hauen, Alter. Will der den gar nicht machen, oder?
Dachte, er will ihn machen.
Alter! Nutte. Ach, so Quark, Alter. Ich verstehe ich nicht.
Ach, das ist ja gar nicht unsere.
So ein.
Ein Flash kommt natürlich noch raus. Die kriegt 6. Glaub ich. Alter, das macht mich verrückt, das Geräusch. Ja, ich kann's mitspielen. Level 5. Ach. No! Oh.
Such a busy world. Shut down.
Mann!
Down.
Oh fuck. In welcher Welt ist das Kill, Alter?
Such a busy world.
Ach fuck, ich hau Aggro.
An ally has been slain.
Auf den noch zu.
Wait until my seeds take root.
Mit der Kill Range, right? Gusting Champ, Alter.
Keine Ult. Sag mal was.
Was denn?
Gott, jetzt habe ich auf die Shitstorm. Dieses Rauschen weg.
Killer, Alter.
Wait until my seeds take root.
Oh ne, schon mal.
Oh mein Gott, okay, weil das wollte ich nicht.
Okay, ich war Half-Life! Ja, ist okay, feiner Champion.
Finde ich cool. Wer habe ich da davon? Ich sterbe davon. Oh!
Ich kann nicht drücken, klar. Warum nicht?
Tja. Oh mein Gott. Das Beste Ding aus dem Leben, Alter.
That you feel about the world and view the world, and then that's led you to not taking actions. And none of this is mysterious, right? You have access to all of his thoughts. I only know them, not because I read your mind, because you're telling me, you're sharing these thoughts with me.
I guess.
And
I think
feel
the
like
thing you're pointing out that I'm also protecting myself, and I think you're also telling me that at a certain point, as we become better friends, it becomes a block to our friendship if I'm too careful.
Yeah, exactly. But I just think there's a tinge of like meta irony that it feels like, and this is supposed to be like a gotcha, or like from my
No, I think you're right.
Like,
I don't think it,
yeah, it feels like at the end of the day, the guarded person here is.
Well, I think that last part isn't true, but I think that I don't think it's mutually exclusive. But I agree. I agree with
Yeah, it
you.
doesn't have to be mutually exclusive, but I won't let you get away from it. You are guarded because there are things that you could have done where we could have had more interactions, but you didn't because you were worried about how I would respond to them. That's the definition of guarded.
That's true, and then I think there's another part about I don't always want to be the person who reaches out.
Sure. Although I think I've, at least recently, for sure, I think almost always the one that reaches out. Yeah, so
that's true. So yeah, I agree with you that I'm guarded, and I think you're I think there is something self-protective in my the whole way on friendliness.
Maybe a little bit, sure.
But it's easy. It's easier for me to acknowledge the ways in which I'm trying to protect you than myself. That's true.
Sure, because I think that I'm curious. What does projection mean to you? Give me your explanation of projection, and then I'll tell you what I think projection is.
I think projection is when you either think somebody else is feeling something you're secretly feeling, or you think they're feeling or doing something that you have a distorted view of it to make it fit what you're secretly feeling. Secret from yourself.
Moment, ich muss das kurz fixen.
Secret from yourself.
Unconsciously.
Verstehe nix und ich hab permanent Rauschen.
You might agree with this.
Okay.
So I would phrase this a little differently. let's say somebody were to go online, okay? And let's say somebody posted.
Wiederhol's nochmal, ich höre dich nicht, ne? Ich muss das
hugging,
mit dem
like, the girl,
Tonstand fixen.
hugging like the daughter, okay? It's like a nanny. And let's say you tweeted out like, I saw the way that you were touching her side, and I know that like when you squeeze your fingers there, you're just thinking of soft and supple flesh. I know you do. When you like read a sentence like that, what you're thinking is like, that sounds like some projection. But why? Why is it projection? And I think the reason why it's projection is because it feels like that person isn't like consciously trying to fuck somebody else over. They're not like trying to do some mind games. I think that what it is when there are things about ourselves that we're intimately familiar with, we tend to see those, sometimes incorrectly, in other people. And I think that's what projection is. I think projection is that I see you do a behavior. I do a similar behavior, but I'm going to ascribe all of my motivations for that behavior to you because I'm seeing that thing that I know exists in myself. So when I would talk about projection, I don't think I would say necessarily anything subconscious or unknowable or unknown. I would just say that like he's doing a behavior, I do a behavior that's kind of like that. Now I'm going to take all of my motivations and all of my reasons for doing it. I'm going to say that he has all of those things too. So I think that what that can lead to is like you might see me not talk to people much. And you personally might not talk to people much. And when you see me not talk to people much, you're like, oh, he's not doing that. I don't do that. And here are all the reasons that I do that. And I'm going to tack that on to him. And then I think that's what I would define as projection. I think that's where most projection comes from.
I think that makes sense. And the only thing I'd add is that I think empathy is kind of like projection, except accurate, where you're saying if I were doing that, this is how I'd be feeling, but you're actually right. And I think projection is definitionally like not.
Potentially.
Like if you tell me I'm projecting, you're not saying I'm accurately projecting. You're saying I'm putting something on you that doesn't fit.
Yeah, I think generally when we say you're projecting, so for instance, like if somebody's stomach is growling, and I'm like, oh, I bet you're hungry. Like technically that's projecting, but nobody would really say that because it's probably true, right? Yeah, that's generally true. I think we generally say somebody's projecting a lot. So here's something that I'll ask you about, and I'm never trying to make you change your definition. I'm just curious because you seem to define something so well. Can you define for me again? What do you mean when you say empathy?
The ability to understand and know the feelings.
Gotcha. So earlier, and especially if you're doing like psychoanalytic things, I could be wrong because I know fuck all about philosophy, psychology. I think that psychoanalysis and Freudian stuff, psychodynamic stuff, I think isn't the general theory or model of mind that there is subconscious stuff that you have, you might not have direct access to, but through conversation, I think you start to pull that out. I don't like that model of mind. When I feel like people being empathetic, my definition of empathy is just that like if you have a certain feeling, I know why you're feeling it. I can intellectualize it. I'm just not emotionally understand it. So like I would consider empathy to be like Max is upset over something. Well, why is Max mad? Max is mad because he's a fucking moron. Well, that's not very empathetic. That doesn't mean anything, right? But if I say, well, Max is upset because I said this and that, and these things make him feel this way. So now he's upset because I said these things. I would consider that to be somebody that is like, oh, you're pretty empathetic. You have an understanding of their feelings. The only reason why I prefer all my definitions to use is obviously being empathetic is good because I think that understanding people's feelings are good. But if we define empathy as like reading somebody's subconscious, I think that gets a little scary because now like we all want to be good. In our minds we write narratives that we're good always, unless we're like sociopaths or ASPD or whatever, right? But if your mental model of you being good requires you to be making like really big psychological reads of people's mind states that they might not even know because it's subconscious, I think that gets into scary states because you might make an incorrect read and be stuck there, or it's very hard to move you off of it, and then you start to fit their behaviors to that mental read that may not be true. And then I think sometimes it can preclude you from seeing somebody's actual emotional state, which would give you greater understanding, and then let you interact with them in a better way that furthers both your relationship. Just for how I do it.
Yeah, I think that's true. I think the more of a leap you're taking, the more empathizing, the more on the risk for it. I think that makes sense. But I think it's inevitable. I think that the projection is also inevitable. I think there's no way to know. There's no way to ever know. says they're feeling something and you empathize with it. Know what we're feeling. We think we're
Vorne rechts, vorne Mitte, hinten links. Hinten rechts, Seite links, Seite rechts.
The only reason I guess I fight against the subconscious thing, and I could be standing like in the field of a lot of psychologists, I could be totally fucking wrong. But I said earlier, I don't believe in depression. I think that most people, or all people, save for injuries or drug use, have access to all of their thoughts. Like, I think that, like, if I truly ask, like, why are you upset? I don't believe that, like, we block that out so hard that we can't even remember it. One, because that doesn't fit with, like, my Evo psyche of how people develop, and two, because I honestly can't even conceive of that.
Hello?
For a drug or an injury. But, like, yeah, so this is why I like to assume that most people have access to all of their thoughts, with the exception of some things, like, I would call this in a very rude way, I would call it like a vibe or a mood that so this might be something like being tired or being hungry. These are things that might influence your thoughts when you're aware. But at some point, I can bring an awareness about these things. I don't know if the psychodynamic model gives you full access to your subconscious. I don't remember if that is good. I think it doesn't. But yeah, go.
So in the way I'm talking about the model of the unconscious and conscious, I think the mechanisms by which I believe those actually function are more like, not that you have thoughts that you can't access, because that doesn't really make sense. If we define a thought as like that makes sense. But more like a belief that ties together all your thoughts that you're not aware of. And so
You might be able to connect thoughts in a way where somebody's like, I don't know why, but I'm always nervous when I drive to the store. I'm always fucking nervous when this happens. And at some point you might say like, hey, like, how is your car? And you're like, well, the brakes are like super squishy and I've gotten in a couple accidents. It's like, maybe you're not nervous going to these places. Maybe you're just nervous like driving your vehicle.
Exactly.
Like, yeah, sure, in that way, sure. So yeah, I can agree with that.
Yeah, and if you say that, it's not literally that they actually have that belief somewhere tucked away in a box.
It's like a relational thing, not like a hidden fact of their mind. Right?
Yeah, it's just a lens. It's like a constellation. It's like you're saying, what if we take all these dots and we draw a different picture? And if I draw the picture, it like resonates with you much more and explains a lot more of not just of how you feel and helps you connect to those feelings, but also helps you figure out what you need to do about those feelings if you're trying to figure it out. And then I do think that also, as far as like emotions being physical sensations that you can be aware of, or like mental sensations, that you can tune them out and not be aware of them, or misplace them or misinterpret them. And I think that if you can look at somebody else's body language and find out, you can guess that they are tired, like with babies. This happens all the time, right? Like the kids, like you can tell when kids are tired, but they don't know.
They have vibes that they don't. Yeah, 100% a kid will.
Right, and you have to inform them that they're tired, and then convince them to like see what